Greetings and como my fellow educators and students, and welcome to this week's episode of Enterprising Educators. And I'm absolutely thrilled to share this week's topic with you. Today's topic deals with the power of socio-emotional learning. It is something extremely near and dear to my heart for reasons I'm going to explain in this video. But before we get to that point, folks, if you like what you see, if you'd like to be part of the Enterprising Educators crew, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, if there's a topic you'd like to have me address in the field of education on this channel, please let me know in the comments below. I am absolutely thrilled to begin dialogue with you all. So let's talk about socio-emotional learning. And before we get to the nitty-gritty of how my policies work, I want to tell you a story, the story of my wedding, actually. It's the end of the 2018 school year, and I'm getting married over the summer. At the end of that school year, my students, all 180 of them, asked me for logistical details for my wedding. And at that point in time, I was sitting there going, well, we're getting married on a boat, the Portland Spirit, which is a boat in the Portland area. And I'm just sitting there going, you can see us off. You might not be able to see the ceremony, but if you want, here's the information, here's the date and time. And I didn't think much of it at the end of the school year. In my defense, it was the end of the school year, and I got exhausted and collapsed on my bed after that day. And this is something that has touched me immensely, and is one of the reasons why I continue to love education and the kinds of relationships you can form through socio-emotional learning. And it's this detail right here, and I'm getting a little choked up while talking about it, because even though this happened a handful of years ago, it still hits me, well, right here, not here, but right here, right next to my comm badge. 9 of those students showed up to see me off. They knew they weren't able to see the actual ceremony, but 9 of them still showed up. And in point of fact, because we had 2 cancellations on the ship, 2 of them even sailed with us. And it made the happiest day of my life even happier, because in addition to marrying the love of my life, I was able to get immense support from 9 students, and even a couple more who sent their best regards over the internet, that I never knew that was possible. So that's the power of socio-emotional learning. So you've seen the end. We're going to go a little Quentin Tarantino style here, and we're going to go back to the beginning. All of these relationships started with a little practice that I do that was socio-emotional learning before the term was even coined. And what I'm about to model for you all works for every subject, and I'm going to show you how you can apply it to every subject at the end of this video, so stay tuned if nothing else. But for this particular video, to keep it as short as possible, I'm going to show you the very first SEL assessment that I developed, and that's called Know Thyself. It's an assessment that I've developed for psychology, and if you buy any of my psychology materials, this is built in to those units. So we're going to talk about, very briefly, 3 people that have impacted my life and helped make me the person I am today. So with that in mind, I'm really excited to take you on a journey across all the production values that I can currently afford. So with that in mind, teleport me to person 1. Oh, hello. Welcome aboard. You're just in time for tea. Now, I should have mentioned, ladies and gentlemen and fellow educators, that the 3 people that have impacted your life don't necessarily have to be actual people. And such is the case for my first person. My first person, ladies and gentlemen and fellow educators, is none other than Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the USS Enterprise, from the TV show Star Trek: The Next Generation. Now, with that in mind, folks, as you might have guessed, I am a major Star Trek fan, and I actually mulled about this for a long time, trying to think of a character that I could model for you folks. And Picard came to a close first, and this is why. As you might know, I'm on the autistic spectrum. And my condition was something that was extremely severe when I was a child. When they diagnosed me with Asperger's syndrome, the diagnosis was extremely dire. I was nonverbal and couldn't really communicate very well at all. And based off of that evidence, experts said that I would not be able to function sufficiently as an adult and would have to be institutionalized by the time I was in high school. Around that time, of all things, my mother watched Star Trek The Next Generation, being an avid Star Trek fan that she was, and still is. And it's one of those things where, for some reason, and I can devote an entire video series to this exact topic, that show resonated with me. And the very first step for how Star Trek resonated with me came in the form of Captain Jean-Luc Picard. I attribute a lot of my voice inflections and my ability to function to that character. Case in point, I learned how to speak by memorizing and studying the way Patrick Stewart delivered lines on his show. This caused more problems and solved significantly other ones. Again, it's one of those things that could be discussed in an entire video series, so let me know in the comments if you want that. But it's one of those things where you got a 5 or 6 year old talking and using cadence and vocabulary that Starfleet officers from the 24th century do. You can do the math on that. But once again, the reason why Picard is number one in this exercise is the fact that I still channel him to this day, many decades after I first met the character. For example, I have this little library in my head of everything Captain Jean-Luc Picard has ever done, even that terrible CBS All Access show that came out in 2020. And with that in mind, anytime I'm in a situation in which I can't fully process, what I do is the little library in my head pulls up a situation that is similar to what I'm dealing with now. And I isolate the various vocabulary and mannerisms that Picard does, and I copy them and follow suit. Case in point, when you're going about your day, everything's going awesome in the classroom, then all of a sudden you hear this sound or something approximating that, my mind automatically adopts this following subroutine, as I call it. Red alert, all hands to battle stations, or in this case, all hands to the football field, where we awkwardly stand in a line while they try to corral 2,000 students in a football field. So, with that in mind, that is why Picard, a fictional character, is one of the 3 important people who have made me who I am today. So with that in mind, and I've always wanted to do this, let's take a look at person 2. Helm, set a course for person 2. Engage. Something really cathartic about doing that. Hello there. You might have guessed that the second person that has impacted my life is none other than Tony Stark, or Iron Man. Now, there's a wide variety of reasons how and why this individual has impacted my life, but we're going to start with the basics. For starters, I absolutely love his style, as I'm sure you could guess. I love his sense of humor, and I love most of all, and this ties into my philosophy as a teacher, his ingenuity. His actual superpower is something that, provided you have the right resources, and as a TPT seller, I definitely believe in providing resources, anybody can develop. Iron Man solves his problems not through some mystical hammer, not through some sort of enhancements through super serums or some sort of infinity gem, or infinity stone rather. He solves it with his wit and creativity. And that's something that I approach there. Just like Iron Man developed his own suits out of thin air, I approach developing preps and curriculum in the same way, completely out of thin air. And just like Iron Man tested his suits in the first movie, you go through, or rather I go through, and I test these materials on the students. What works gets kept and packaged and sold on Teachers Pay Teachers. What doesn't gets reverse engineered. The parts that do work are kept, and the parts that don't keep getting tooled, keep getting tooled, keep getting tooled, just like Iron Man did with his suits. Iron Man made, by the time Endgame came around, 85 different suits. He's an extremely prolific inventor. The Mark 85, beautiful suit. Now, folks, as you can tell here, I'm not quite there yet. I'm not at Mark 85, but my AP US History curriculum, which is available on teacherspayteachers.com, is currently on its Mark 8. An entire year's worth of curriculum, every single lesson, every single piece of support material is available in its Mark 8 form. Mark 9 is coming summer 2022. So that's the perspective here, folks. I absolutely love Iron Man as a character, and he has impacted my professional career in ways that I didn't really realize until a couple years down the road when I was developing more and more materials, and I realized, hey, this is kind of like Iron Man in his suits. So in that spirit, we're going to transition to the third person. I promise you this third person is an actual individual. So with that said, Jarvis, ready me a suit to go to person 3.
Hey, how's it, huh?
With that said, my third person is none other than my grandfather, Joseph Luis Huquilepojo Garcia. Now, the reason why I picked my grandfather is I attribute a lot of the reasons why I love American history and teach it to my students to this great man. For starters, he is, by any definition of the term, the personification of the American dream. My grandfather was the son of Spanish immigrants in Hawaii. His first job was cutting sugarcane on the island of Maui. And through hard work and good character, he rose through the ranks to become a member of first the territorial legislature and then the state legislature. And as you can tell by this picture from the Bishop Museum in Honolulu, he's also one of Hawaii's founding fathers. When he passed away, the governor not only came to our wake, but also ordered that all flags in Hawaii be put at half-staff. That event changed my life, and it was the culmination of his extremely storied life. Growing up, my grandfather would tell me lots of stories involving people that I had heard about in school, but because I was in the second and third grade, it didn't really click. It didn't really register for me. I would hear names in conversations with my grandfather like President Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, Nelson Rockefeller, all these names that he talks about as his friends. And I'm just sitting there going, this means something, and I don't fully understand what it means, because in my defense, it was, I was in the second or third grade. When my grandfather passed away, I attribute that as one of the major turning points of my life, because I saw something that day that completely changed my life. And in addition to the governor coming to the wake, when I went into his office, I saw a letter framed behind his desk from Richard Nixon, inviting my grandfather to the 1973 Watergate inauguration. Now, this hit me in several different ways. For starters, it's Nixon, so you can read into that as deeply as you want. But secondly, this is a major event in history, and one of my ancestors took part in it. And from that point on, I really studied history with a lot more vigor. I was always good at it for reasons I'll talk about in future episodes, but that was the proper catalyst for me to really get strong in my historical skills. And it's it's something that continues to move me to this day. And it's one of the reasons why I have such an affection for American history. Before we go back to the classroom, there's a couple things I need to say. For starters, you might have noticed, if you are a longtime viewer, that I use a lot of Hawaiian terms in these videos. Please understand that that I am Native Hawaiian. The technical term is Hapahaole, which is one part Native Hawaiian, one part foreigner, because my grandfather married into a Hawaiian family. I know I may not present it because in addition to being Hapahaole, my dad married somebody from the mainland, but my Hawaiian ancestry manifests in my nose. I've had a lot of people in my career, well-intentioned individuals, who see me trying to give Hawaiian cultural lessons, Hawaiian language lessons, etc. And because they don't know, they've accused me of appropriation, and that's certainly not the case. There are various reasons why I embed Hawaiian vocabulary, Hawaiian language, Hawaiian cultural customs in my classroom, and by consequence my videos, which will come out in future episodes. Please let me know if you're interested in that, and I'll prioritize those topics over others. With that in mind, let's return to the classroom, and I'm going to do it in Hawaiian style. E hoi ho, I ka hale kula. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow educators and students. E komo mai ho to my classroom. With that in mind, I do have a little disclaimer that I need to point out before we get into the applications of this video, or rather this lesson. And that is this. This is something that is done discreetly or clandestinely. What ends up happening is you assign this as a written essay, or if you prefer, a private video that is sent to you, and that allows you to give comments back and forth and creates a private dialogue between you and that specific student. That is crucial because it'll allow you to see a more authentic version of the student, him, her, or themselves. That is vital. With that in mind, what you just saw, and I hope you enjoyed, was an example of how this works for psychology. This ties directly into the content and the skills in psychology, specifically modeled behavior and observational learning. The student is going through their own lives introspectively and saying, of all the things that I've observed, of all the behavior that I've observed, which three people has made the biggest impression on me? That's how you blend socio-emotional learning with content in your class. And this can be applied in several different ways too. For example, if you choose to do history, instead of three people, have the students talk about three events. And if you talk about three events, students have to go through their entire life's experience and pick three events that they argue are the most important. And that ties into the AP historical content and curriculum and skills, because just like on the test, students have to go through a wide length and breadth of events and pieces of evidence and pick out certain pieces and certain easily identifiable concepts and argue why those concepts, of which there are three, are more important than anything else. Now, I am planning on modeling my three major events activity, SEL activity, in a future video. I'm thinking about building a Making A Push Fun playlist to this channel. Please let me know if you're interested in that. I'll prioritize that over other videos if you're interested. So with that said, that's how you could do this for history. If you're doing STEM, the same concept applies, because in addition to having students demonstrate socio-emotional skills by talking about 3 people or 3 events or some combination thereof that have made the students who they are, you attach it to something by having them write or design a personal equation. And you can see this in the image that I have over my shoulder here. Person A plus minus multiplier divided by person B plus minus divided by or multiplied by or squared person C equals 1U, or just U if you prefer. A little bit of a math joke there. I hope there's some math people out there that enjoyed that. That is the equation, and having them write out the paragraphs are the proof, so to speak. You can do that too. So with that in mind, folks, I need to emphasize this again. Please make this private. Please make this clandestine. That's how you get the good information. That's how a student shows you how they operate. And then you can have a private dialogue back and forth. It is phenomenal, and who knows? They might end up coming to your wedding or some other major event in your life. Before we go, folks, let's talk very quickly about the rubric. How many points is this worth? Well, let's take a look at the rubric here. It's worth 10 points. In the past, this was done in written form. With the pandemic, you can do it, have them make a video, of course, or you can do it through PowerPoint or whatever, but they need to talk about 3 people, and each person is worth 3 points. They cite the person, they describe the person's actions, and they explain how that person's actions impact their life. So 3 points per person, 3 people equals 9. And then the 10th point is a gimme. It's some sort of visual representation of how that person views the 3 people or 3 events in their life. Now, once again, if you're doing something STEM related, this is already part of the activity. It's part of the personal formula. Person A plus or minus person B plus minus divided by or multiplied by person C equals 1U, or 1 me, or just me, depending on how you want to do it. Before I forget, if you do STEM and you do decide to adopt this, please let me know in the comments below how this works. I have designed this. I have never applied it because I don't teach STEM, but I would absolutely love to see how this plays out in a STEM class. So that's how that would work. If you, for example, do psychology, a lot of students get into this. You have them create some sort of visual representation as to how these 3 people fit inside their own head. Now, that can be as simple as somebody drawing a circle and writing the 3 names in there, or some students get really creative and show off their artistic side and create like a hollowed out head and then draw people inside the head. Whatever the students want to do, they can do. But if they give you some sort of visual representation, that's the point that gets at 10, that gives them 10 points rather. So what do you think, folks? Do you have experience with SEL in this way? Is there a new practice that you've developed that blends SEL practices with your own content? Please let me know in the comments. And also, if you have any other ideas for future videos, please also let me know in the comments below. With that in mind, let's transport to the next video. Hello again. Mahalo nui loa for watching that video. Don't forget to tune in every Teacher Tuesday for a new Enterprising Educators video. And if you have an idea for a new video, please let me know in the comments below. So, with that said, live long and prosper, e mo lama pono, and see you next time.